Hello, my name is Verena Quill, daughter, sister, former peacekeeper. And 5 minutes before my life cracked open like a bone under pressure, I was standing barefoot in my living room, thinking I'd finally earned quiet. Then came the knock. The wine hadn't even warmed in my hand when the knock came. Not a soft tap, not a polite hello. It rattled the glass in the frame beside me. My fingers clenched around the stem of the glass, the warmth in my chest from the first sip now gone. I didn't need to ask who it was. Only one person in my life knocks like they've already been invited inside. Zinnia. Looking back now, I should have known this wasn't just a visit. The door creaked when I opened it. Not wide, just enough. Enough to let in the sunset and the scent of desperation. She stood there in her usual curated chaos, lip gloss perfect, phone in hand, eyes hungry for applause. Behind her was our mother, Verena, crossed arms, smile too stiff to be genuine. They didn't wait for me to welcome them. Zinnia pushed past like it was her place to. Her heels clicked over my marble floors as if rehearsed. Verena followed, setting her handbag down like she'd returned to a home she'd funded. This view, Zinnia said, spinning slowly, eyes scanning the skyline like she had a claim on it. You really made it, sis. The word, sis, sounded like a slur in her mouth. This place, Verena said, brushing a non-existent speck off the counter, feels like compensation. For what? They never said. I didn't speak. Not yet. I waited. Then Zinnia placed it on the island, a cheap yellow folder. Not leather. Not bound. Just thin plastic, the kind you'd find in a middle schooler's backpack. Labeled in bold Sharpie, shared equity discussion. My stomach didn't drop. It curled, like it had seen this trick before. I figured it was time we had this talk. Zinnia said, you've got a lot going for you now, and honestly, it's amazing. But it's also complicated. Complicated. That was her favorite word for justifying theft with sentiment. Verena's voice slid in like a knife through warm butter. Don't be dramatic. We're proud of you. Of course we are. But let's not pretend you got here without help. I set my wine glass down carefully. The silence in the room wasn't awkward. It was tactical. Zinnia opened the folder, revealing printed spreadsheets, transfer logs, old receipts, even a photo of me at 18 with a check in my hand. A check I had signed. A check I had earned waiting tables at a diner while they spent weekends planning Zinnia's Sweet 16. You're serious? I said, voice flat. Verena stepped in, that motherly tone she used on PDA boards and church committees activated like muscle memory. We gave up a lot, sweetheart. Your father and I could have had a career too. But we made sacrifices for you girls. All we're asking for is acknowledgement. I looked at Zinnia. She didn't flinch, just flipped another page like she was reading terms she didn't write. I didn't realize it then, but that moment changed everything. I begged for rent money when I started college. I said, Dad told me to figure it out. I did. Verena shook her head. You always twist things. We did what we could. Zinnia added, almost sweetly, we're just trying to be fair. Half seems fair. Fair. A word they'd never once applied to my side of the story. Acknowledgement isn't a property split, I said, and guilt isn't a deed. Zinnia leaned forward, eyes glittering like she thought this was the part where I'd cave. Come on. We both know this isn't just yours. I didn't respond. I just watched the sunset burn behind her. This was my space, my skyline, my silence. They hadn't come to congratulate me. They'd come to collect. The next morning, sunlight slid across my kitchen counter like nothing had happened. The wine glass from last night was still there, a faint smudge of lipstick marking the spot where I'd stopped pretending everything was fine. I poured coffee instead of wine this time, though both felt like armor. The city was still half asleep, muted horns, early trains, the low hum of life moving forward. My phone buzzed against the counter. I almost ignored it, but the vibration wouldn't quit. When I finally looked down, I saw the notification that would set the tone for everything that came next. Zinnia had tagged me in an Instagram story. There she was, perched on my velvet couch, hair curled, smile staged, holding my favorite mug. The caption read, "Brunching in our new home. Sister goals, family love." My throat tightened, but I didn't drink. I stared at the screen until her face blurred. They didn't take the penthouse, I thought. They took the narrative. I'd built my life like a ledger, numbers, columns, control. Every choice balanced, every cost paid. But there's no formula for public humiliation that looks like affection. She hadn't broken in. She'd rewritten the story. Looking back, I should have known this was only the beginning. Later that morning, I took the elevator down for a grocery delivery. The doorman, Larry, always polite, always chatty, smiled as he scanned the package label. "Your sister's lovely," he said, like it was a compliment. "She told me you two bought this place together. Congratulations." I froze for half a breath, then forced a smile. "Right. Something like that." He nodded, proud of remembering the family detail, proud of being friendly. I signed the receipt, my name looping neatly at the bottom. My name. She didn't just take the couch, I thought. She took the floor beneath my name. I didn't correct him. I didn't have the energy to explain that sometimes people don't steal what you own, they steal how others see it. By the time I reached my floor again, my inbox was lighting up. My company's group chat pinged with notifications. I set down the groceries, opened my laptop, and felt my stomach sink. "Didn't know you were moving in with family," one message read. Another popped up. "A coworker I barely spoke to. You're so sweet letting your sister stay. That view, though, amazing." Then came the screenshot. Zinnia's story. My couch. My cup. My living room. Laughter emojis underneath. Comments about how lucky she was to have a sister like me. I stared at the screen. I didn't blink. Didn't move. I used to write my life like an equation. I thought. Balanced. Precise. Predictable. Now it was graffiti across a glass wall for the world to watch. The Slack window blinked again. Another message. "You're trending," someone joked. Trending. Like I was a hashtag, not a human. I closed the laptop slowly, palms flat against the cool aluminum. The espresso had gone cold. My reflection in the screen looked distant, like I'd already started disappearing into someone else's story. I walked to the balcony. The city stretched out beneath me, glass and steel pretending to be solid. I'd once believed success could protect me from chaos, but success only made you easier to find. Zinnia had always been good at finding me when she needed money, when she needed validation, when she needed a stage. Now she'd found me again. My phone buzzed once more. A direct message from her. The preview line glowed across the screen. Hope you don't mind I tagged you. It's just for the aesthetic. I didn't open it. I didn't delete it either. I saved it. Looking back now, I should have seen it for what it was, not vanity, but strategy. Zinnia had learned that in our family, truth wasn't about what happened. It was about who spoke loudest. The apartment was too quiet to sleep in. The kind of quiet that hums inside your ears until you start to mistake it for guilt. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the streetlight from outside slicing the room into gold and shadow. Somewhere between midnight and dawn, I gave up pretending to rest. I padded to the kitchen barefoot. The tiles were cold. My phone lit up as soon as I touched it. Zinnia's story again. 40,000 views this time. 40,000 strangers looking at my couch, my walls, my life, and believing it was hers too. She always knew how to take. She just learned how to frame the theft as love. The numbers blinked on the screen like a pulse. Likes, comments. The word sister repeated again and again. I set the phone down and poured myself a cup of tea I didn't drink. The steam rose for a while, then faded, the surface of the cup still trembling from my hands. I thought I was done being surprised by her. I was wrong. That night, every sound became too loud. The hum of the fridge, the tick of the clock, even my own breathing sounded guilty. I turned off the lights, but darkness didn't help. It only brought memories back. I was 19 again, standing in a narrow dorm hallway that smelled like burnt popcorn and cheap detergent. My fingers clutched a phone card, the kind you scratch to reveal the code, and I waited for my parents to pick up. It was raining outside. The hallway window rattled. I could hear laughter from another room, people with families that answer calls. When my mother's voice finally came through, it wasn't warm. It never was. "Hello," she said. "Mom, it's me," I said. My throat was dry. "I need a favor, just for this month. The rent's due Friday, and She interrupted before I could finish. "You're the one who wanted to go off on your own. We told you it wouldn't be easy. Figure it out, honey." I pressed the phone closer, as if that would make her care. "I'm working 2 jobs already. I just need a few $100s. "I don't have it," she said. "Your father doesn't either. You chose independence. Live it." Then the line went dead. I remember staring at the receiver for a long time, wondering if I'd heard her right. The hum of the dial tone sounded almost kind compared to her voice. That night, I cried quietly into a cup of ramen, counting the bubbles on the surface until they vanished. That was the last time I asked them for anything. The next morning, I found my scholarship letter again, creased, faded, nearly torn, and folded it into the drawer of my desk. That piece of paper became my religion, proof that hard work could replace love. I didn't know it then, but that belief would become my armor and my curse. The sound of the fridge door snapping shut brought me back to the present. I wasn't 19 anymore. I wasn't powerless. But somehow the wound felt exactly the same. When I unlocked my phone again, the screen glowed with a new post. Zinnia's TikTok. The caption read, "My sister built everything herself, and I couldn't be prouder." That's what sisters do. The video looped, Zinnia dancing in my kitchen, barefoot, wearing my sweater. Her voiceover, "Built this from nothing." She smiled into the camera like she'd been through the same storms, like she'd earned the skyline view behind her. I didn't feel anger at first, just a slow, sinking clarity. She didn't want to live here. She wanted to be seen here, to be seen as part of a life she'd refused to build. There's a difference between wanting family and wanting credit. My phone buzzed again, comments rolling in faster than I could read them. You're both amazing. Power sisters. Family over everything. I laughed then, quiet, sharp, humorless. Family over everything. If only they knew what that really meant. My reflection in the dark window looked like a stranger. Someone tired of fixing, tired of forgiving. I closed the app and opened my notes instead. A blank screen. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, then typed 3 words. Collect evidence quietly. It wasn't revenge I wanted. It was precision. I saved the note and stared at the city lights flickering below. Zinnia had always played to the crowd. This time, she'd built one big enough to believe her. But I'd spent years learning numbers, systems, and paper trails. I knew how to make the truth stick. The tea beside me had gone cold, untouched. I took a sip anyway. It tasted bitter, like old promises. Outside, dawn began to break, pale and slow. The light crawled up the glass walls until it reached my reflection again. I looked at myself and whispered, "Let her perform. I'll prepare." Looking back, that was the moment I stopped being the quiet one. The envelope was thick enough to catch air when it slid beneath my door. It landed with a weight that didn't match its size. I stared at it for a while, afraid to touch it, not because of what it was, but because of who had sent it. I picked it up slowly, the paper cool and stiff in my hands. The letterhead read, "Ray Family Legal Representation." Not my lawyer. Theirs. My chest tightened. I hadn't even opened it, and already my body reacted like I'd been slapped. Inside, a formal request, division of property based on family equity contributions. Clean font, legal phrasing, no emotion, except the kind you manufacture to sound righteous. They weren't just rewriting the story. They were filing it as fact. I thought I'd built walls high enough, I whispered to myself. But paper apparently climbs. There was a line that stuck out, highlighted in soft yellow like it was doing me a favor. Given the substantial familial support over the years, this property may be subject to shared ownership. Support. The same family that left me to choose between rent and ramen had suddenly decided they'd built this penthouse with me. It was like they'd taken my past, reworded it, and handed it back with a bill attached. I folded the letter, slipped it back into the envelope, and placed it in the drawer beneath the coffee filters. I didn't throw it away. That would have felt like surrender. Instead, I grabbed my keys and headed downtown. The law firm's building was glass and chrome. Too clean, too quiet. The kind of place where power whispered instead of shouted. The receptionist gave me a clipboard and a pen. Her smile was polite, but tight, like she'd been trained to expect trouble. I filled in my name. Verena Quill. Still mine. 15 minutes later, I was sitting across from a paralegal who looked barely older than the cappuccino he carried. "I'm here to request access to the purchase documents for my property," I said. He nodded, typing something into his screen. "You're listed on the deed, correct. I'm the only one who should be." He raised an eyebrow. "Should be." I didn't answer, just waited. When the file opened on his screen, I leaned forward. There it was, my name, my address, my bank's wire confirmation. And then, below it, another name, Zinnia Ray. Co-owner, it read. Signature pending confirmation. My stomach turned. She hadn't just claimed credit in Instagram captions. She'd written herself into the legal reality of my home. I squinted at the scanned document. Her name sat where mine had once stood alone. And the signature, hers, mimicked mine like a shadow. The same loops, the same deliberate upward tilt. It wasn't mine, but it wanted to be. She didn't just take my face for her posts. I whispered. She took my name for her claim. The paralegal tilted the screen slightly toward me. Ma'am, this looks like a duplicate from your original paperwork. Sometimes with shared addresses. No, I cut in. It looks like a theft dressed as paperwork. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. Would you like to file a discrepancy claim? I'd like to file a restraining order, I muttered. He blinked. I blinked back. By the time I got home, my hands were steady again, but only because I wasn't letting myself shake. I dropped my purse on the counter, turned on my laptop, and opened a new folder. I titled it, Evidence Ray Case. Inside, I dragged the photos, the screenshots, the legal PDF. Every message, every clip, every post where she tagged me without asking. There's a kind of silence before war, I typed in the metadata. The kind where you realize the only language left is proof. No more debates. No more family meetings. No more let's talk it through. They'd chosen legal documents. So would I. I saved the folder, encrypted it, and backed it up to 3 separate drives. Just as I closed the lid, my phone lit up again. A message from my mother. It's family, not business. Don't embarrass us. I stared at the words. The gall. The entitlement. I didn't respond. But I saved it. Looking back now, that was the day I stopped defending myself with words and started preparing my evidence. I didn't flinch when the text came in. I just read it. Twice. Then set the phone down beside my coffee, like it was just another headline. You won't like what happens if this goes public. Think about your job. I didn't have to guess who sent it. The number was blocked, but the voice behind it wasn't. It was stitched together from every dinner table threat, every whispered guilt trip disguised as concern. I knew it the way, the sound of your own name being misused. I sat at the kitchen island. The surface still chilled from last night. The lights were dim, but my thoughts weren't. They sharpened in the quiet. Across from me were 3 manila folders. One marked financials, one marked communication, and one marked ZR, signature dispute. I opened the first, flipping through statements from old accounts, receipts I hadn't looked at in years. That's when I saw it. A wire transfer from 5 years ago. My name listed as sender. The memo read, Zinnia's last semester. I remembered the conversation. Vaguely. She had called crying. Again, saying she'd finally gone back to finish her degree. Said she was serious this time. Said mom had already co-signed the loans, but needed help covering the last tuition deadline. I wired the money. I didn't even think about it. I was making 6 figures then, barely out of my own student debt. It felt like progress, like family. Now, that one act was being twisted into a pattern of joint contribution. The email came minutes later. From my mother. Don't forget who helped Zinnia with her tuition. You sign that check. Family debt is collective. She didn't say thank you. She didn't say we appreciate it. She said, you owe us more. I poured black coffee into a mug that no longer felt like mine. My hand shook. Not from fear. No, fear had been burned out weeks ago. This was something else. Containment. They talk about love like a transaction, I thought, and about money like a bloodline. I didn't realize it then, but that moment changed everything. The phone buzzed again. This time, a name I hadn't seen in months. Grandpa Amos. His name alone made something in me soften. He was the only one who had ever called just to say he was proud. The one who mailed me books when I was little, underlining lines in pencil. The one who taught me the difference between silence and peace. I answered. His voice was tired, but kind. "Your mother's upset, sweetheart," he said. "She says you're going too far." I closed my eyes. I haven't even started. I'm just done apologizing. There was a pause. Then, just, "Be careful. Don't make enemies you can't unmake. We're still family." I didn't respond right away. I wanted to say, they were the ones who chose this war. I wanted to say, you should have called sooner. But I didn't. I'm not fighting them. I said, I'm protecting myself. "I know," he said. "I just miss when this was easier." So did I. Looking back now, I should have known then that I couldn't count on even the people who once meant sanctuary. I ended the call gently. No anger, just gravity. Then I opened my laptop, clicked the camera on, hit record. I didn't post anything. I wasn't ready for that. But I started a video log, a trail of dates and facts and timestamps, in case things got worse, in case someone asked why I didn't try to tell my side sooner. "This isn't about a penthouse," I said, eyes locked on my reflection in the screen. "It's about the quiet entitlement that drips from every we raised you, like I should still be paying interest." My voice didn't shake. My hands didn't either. "This ends here," I whispered. "Next time they knock, I won't answer. I'll file." The cursor blinked, waiting. I saved the file under a folder labeled, "In case they lie." Then the phone buzzed again. New number, new message. "You won't like what happens if this goes public. Think about your job." I read it once, calmly. Then I added it to the folder. Looking back now, that was the moment I stopped hoping they'd stop. And I started preparing for when they didn't. The morning hit harder than coffee. I stood at the window, the city unfolding like a complicated lie, one I now understood line by line. I had my folder. I had my proof. I had that smile in my mother's message that wasn't typed but bled through. "Don't embarrass us." They didn't want truth. They wanted silence. I dressed slower than usual, not because I was tired, but because I was steadying myself. My blouse was pressed, my slacks neat, my shoes polished. That's what power looked like, especially when the walls were whispering about you. At the office, no one met my eyes. Kara, my assistant, handed me the board packet without comment. Her lips parted like she wanted to say something, but she blinked twice instead and returned to her desk. The meeting room was colder than it needed to be. Glass walls, long table, coffee that tasted like old apologies. The head of PR slid a manila folder across the table. No smile, just tension tucked behind his tie. "We thought you should see this," he said, his voice neutral. Inside the folder were printouts, screenshots from Reddit, TikTok, Twitter. All the same story with slightly different spins. Rich sister refuses to share penthouse. Parents near foreclosure. She parties in a Manhattan high-rise. Another headline read, From Sisterhood to Selfish, the Quill family split. My hands didn't shake this time, not even when Karen from HR asked, Is any of this true? I looked her in the eyes. No. Would you like to make a statement? I closed the folder gently. Not yet. I'll make it legally. I stood. No rush. No panic. Just a woman choosing the door over their judgment. I didn't owe anyone a press release for surviving betrayal. I walked straight to my attorney's office. They were expecting me. The conference room was quieter. No posturing here, just facts, timestamps, affidavits. We dimmed the lights, and a forensic specialist projected my mortgage application from 2017 onto the screen. He zoomed in on the signature. My signature. Then he pulled up the deed modification Zinnia had filed 2 months ago. The overlays matched too well. These loops, he explained, are lifted. They weren't written. They were copied digitally. The pressure marks are inconsistent. No ink drag. It's not original. It's a forgery. My attorney glanced at me. You ready? I nodded. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I just kept breathing. This isn't about theft anymore, I said. It's about principle and survival. They walked me through the complaint, civil litigation, fraudulent property claim. We cross-referenced messages, receipts, my original deed, the wire transfer Zinnia had used as leverage, every line a scar. They thought I wouldn't notice. When it came time to sign the petition, I paused, just for a second. My voice shakes. I thought, not from fear, from the weight of no longer letting them narrate my life. I signed. My attorney placed the document into a red folder and labeled it Petition for Civil Litigation, Fraudulent Property Claim. He closed the folder, met my gaze. We'll file by noon. I stood slowly. Thank you. He nodded once, the kind of nod that says, You were quiet long enough. As I stepped back into the street, the sun finally broke through the clouds. Not much, just enough to catch on the glass doors behind me, reflect on the metal trim of the folder in my bag. This wasn't over, but the part where I stayed silent was. Looking back now, that signature wasn't just fake. It was the moment they forged my patience into resistance. The invitation arrived 2 days after I filed the claim. Subject line cheerful, as a balloon. Mom's birthday dinner, casual family gathering. There were emojis, a cake, a flower, as if the last few weeks hadn't happened, as if their version of normal was still the one we were all pretending to live in. I stared at the screen long enough for the pixels to blur. Then I scrolled. The guest list was BCC'd, of course, but I knew who'd be there. Zinnia didn't send flowers when I was promoted. She didn't call when I bought the Penthouse, but now she wanted me at a banquet hall in Rochester, wearing a smile like nothing had happened. They never ask without a plan, I thought, and they never plan without performance. Still, I went, not to forgive, not to play along. I went to document. The banquet hall was bigger than I expected, draped in soft pinks and white linen, strings of fairy lights, gold-rimmed glasses. Too much for a casual dinner. At the entrance, a photographer with a lanyard raised his camera. I lifted my hand slightly. No, thank you. He hesitated, then stepped aside. Zinnia found me before I'd crossed halfway. Her dress clung just right, hair pinned in that effortless style that takes 40 minutes and a stylist's hand. She hugged me before I could sidestep. "So glad you came," she whispered. "Smile. Just for a second." There was a lens behind her shoulder, a red light blinking. My stomach clenched. "Let's not fake what's already broken," I said, voice quiet but not kind. Her eyes flicked, one beat, two, then reset into charm. Family's messy, but people love a comeback story. A server passed with champagne. I didn't take one. The banner above the table read, "Family First, Ray Reunion." This wasn't a birthday dinner. It was a campaign. And I was the press release. Zinnia's voice floated through the air as she introduced me to a cousin I hadn't seen in years. "This is my sister," she said sweetly. "She's the one with the penthouse." There it was. That word again. Ownership draped in affection. I played the part for 3 more minutes. Then excused myself with a smile no one should have believed. In the restroom, I locked the door and pulled out my phone. The live stream was already up. Zinnia's voice, syrupy and staged, filled the stall. "It means the world to have my sister back. We've been through so much, but tonight she came home." The screen showed me standing near the cake table, my expression unreadable. Caption, "When she saw the love, she came back sister strong." I didn't feel rage. I felt calculation and clarity. I opened my saved folder, scrolled past texts, screenshots, legal PDFs, until I found the video. The one Zinnia never knew I'd kept. From 2 months ago. Her in my kitchen, standing in front of the mirror, practicing tears. Rehearsing lines about redemption, about trauma, about rebuilding sisterhood. Then smiling wide. "That'll do," she had said. "God, I'm good." I sent it to one person, a journalist I trusted. No commentori, no caption, just the file. Then I unlocked the bathroom door and walked back into the room like I didn't just light the match. The rest of the evening moved in slow motion. Zinnia toasted our mother, thanked the guests, made vague references to healing and learning to trust again. I clapped, politely, and waited. It took 23 minutes. First, the pause in the live stream, then the glitches, then the sudden end. I checked Twitter. Zinnia the scammer was trending by midnight. Someone had clipped the video, overlaid it with her speech from 5 minutes ago. Side by side, lie and proof. It spread faster than anything I could have written myself. Across the room, Zinnia's phone buzzed, then buzzed again, and again. Her face didn't crumble. Not yet, but her grip on the champagne flute tightened. She looked up at me from across the room, and for the first time in years, I didn't look away. This wasn't revenge. It was the record finally set straight. Looking back now, it wasn't silence that ended them. It was their own script flipped mid-performance. The courthouse smelled like rain and nerves. Gray sky pressing low, cameras flashing from behind barriers. I hadn't slept much, but it didn't matter anymore. I'd stopped needing sleep once I started needing justice. I climbed the courthouse steps alone. No entourage, no lawyer walking beside me. He would meet me inside. All I carried was the red folder and a silence sharper than anger. They brought cameras to shame me, I thought, as flashes lit my face. I brought documents to end it. Inside, the hall echoed with shuffling feet, whispers the hum of waiting. I found my reflection in the courthouse glass. No makeup, no armor. Just the truth standing in its plainest form. The hearing room wasn't grand. It didn't need to be. The weight in the air was enough. On one side sat my attorney, posture straight, calm. On the other, Zinnia and Verena, my mother and sister, both dressed in matching tones of remorse. Zinnia kept her eyes lowered, pretending humility. Verena dabbed her nose with a tissue that had no tears. The judge entered. The room stood. Then the session began. The defense went first. Your Honor, their attorney said smoothly, this is a simple misunderstanding. Families contribute in ways that aren't always documented. Emotional labor, financial support, it's all part of a shared foundation. He paused for effect. My clients only seek what's fair. Fair. That word again. I'd started counting how many times they used it. It always meant the opposite. When it was our turn, my lawyer spoke softly, like truth didn't need volume. Your Honor, the documents presented by the defense are not only false, they're illegal. We have evidence of forgery, verified by a forensic analyst. He pressed a button on the remote. The projector blinked to life. On the screen, two signatures overlapped, the original deed from 2017 and the doctored version from last year. The loops were identical, too identical. The analyst stepped forward. These lines were not handwritten. They were digitally lifted. The overlay matches exactly to Ms. Quill's prior mortgage documents. The judge leaned back, unimpressed. You're asking us to believe this was an accident. The defense stammered. Verena whispered something to her lawyer, who only shook his head. Then the forensic specialist displayed a timeline, emails, file metadata, the digital fingerprint of the forgery. My sister's name sat right there, in the audit trail. The silence that followed wasn't mercy. It was exposure. Verena's hand trembled. Zinnia went still, blinking too quickly. I didn't ask for punishment, I thought. But when justice arrives, it's not my job to soften the blow. The gavel struck once. Motion granted. The fraudulent claim dismissed. But that wasn't all. The judge's voice cut through the quiet. Furthermore, the plaintiff is advised that any future attempts to falsify property documents will result in criminal referral. Zinnia's face drained of color. Verena collapsed into her chair, eyes glassy, the performance finally cracking. When it was over, I walked out through the courthouse doors into the waiting press. Microphones, cameras, questions flung like stones. Ms. Quill, any comment? Was the lawsuit real? Do you forgive your family? I didn't stop. I didn't speak. I let the sound chase me until it couldn't keep up. By afternoon, the story had shifted. The GoFundMe page Verena created had been flagged as fraudulent. Thousands refunded. Accounts suspended. Zinnia's sponsorship deals disappeared one by one. A skincare brand issued a statement. We do not align with deceptive brand storytelling. The same people who'd called her inspiring last month now called her a manipulator. Karma moved quietly, but it didn't miss. As I walked through Times Square that evening, the billboards flashed familiar faces, celebrities, models, promotions. Then, right in the center, a digital ad glitched and went black. A blank canvas. No slogans. No images. No noise. I stopped and stared at it. For the first time, Silence didn't feel like exile. It felt earned. Somewhere, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Rent due Friday. No exceptions. I didn't need to ask who it was. I could picture her, Zinnia, sitting in a small rental, ceiling cracked, the echo of applause gone. I put the phone away and kept walking. Looking back now, that day wasn't about winning. It was about reclaiming what they thought I'd forgotten. Myself. Justice had been loud. But healing would whisper. The wind that evening didn't rush. It wandered, like it had nowhere to be, no one to impress. It curved lazily around the rusting balcony railing, traced the edge of my watering can with a casual swipe, and moved on. It was a breeze that asked for nothing, expected nothing. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't flinch from it. I stood barefoot on the terrace, the floor cool beneath me. The rosemary brushed against my fingers as if reminding me it was still alive. It had almost died last month, forgotten like so many other things beneath the weight of court filings, late-night calls with lawyers, and relentless news alerts that made me feel both exposed and erased at once. But somehow the plan had survived. A little brittle, yes, but resilient. I understood that kind of survival. Soft jazz hummed from the kitchen speaker. Something Ella Fitzgerald, I think. But I wasn't really listening. My mind hovered in that space between remembering and releasing. A limbo I'd gotten used to. I hadn't won a battle, not in the way people meant when they said things like, "You showed them." I didn't triumph. I didn't rise from ashes or deliver a rousing speech that made people clap and weep. I had simply stopped participating in their war. Peace, as it turned out, wasn't loud. It didn't come with parades or applause or headlines. It came softly, like that wind. It came in the quiet that no longer hurt, in the stillness that didn't echo with accusations or absence, in the mornings where no one demanded explanations. The apartment glowed golden with late sunlight, its warmth casting long shadows across the hardwood floor. Outside, the city was beginning to melt into a quieter kind of dusk, that liminal hour when the day sighed its last breath and the night waited just out of view. Then I heard it, the familiar metallic click of the mail slot. It startled me, not because it was loud, but because it felt sudden. It felt like the past slipping a hand under the door. I walked slowly toward it. Each step seemed heavier than it was, like my body remembered too many steps like this, approaching news I hadn't asked for. On the floor was a single envelope, plain, white, no postage stamp, hand-delivered. The handwriting stopped me, careful, slanted, elegant in that old-fashioned way that made you think of inkwells and patience. A Quill Rochester. My chest tightened. Grandpa. My fingers shook slightly as I picked it up, like the envelope might shatter from the weight of what it carried. I hadn't heard from him since everything came crashing down. He'd disappeared from the noise, from the family group chats, from the legal mess. Some said he was traveling. Some said he was unwell. I hadn't asked. I hadn't wanted to hear more of what people said. I opened the letter carefully, fingers running along the seam like it was stitched shut with memory. It was short. I still don't understand everything, but I trust what I see. You didn't scream. You didn't run. You just held the line. That takes more strength than most people know. I sat on the edge of the couch, the letter pressed gently to my chest like it was something warm. There were no tears, just a quiet gravity, as if my body finally allowed itself to feel the weight of being seen. It didn't fix what was broken. It didn't erase the years of silence, the cold dinners, the awkward holidays, the whispered justifications people gave for why things were the way they were. But it mattered. It mattered because for the first time in years, someone in my family saw me and didn't ask for something in return. I set the letter beside me and reached for my phone. I didn't overthink it. I didn't hesitate. Contacts. Scroll. Zinnia. Blocked. A single tap. Unblock. Not because I wanted to talk. Not because I wanted to reopen anything that had long since burned, but because I didn't want to carry that particular weight anymore. Forgiveness, I'd come to realize, isn't always about them. It's about me, about the line I choose to draw, not to let her in, but to stop letting her occupy space in my mind, in my chest, in my story. Forgiveness wasn't a gift she earned. It was a boundary I chose. And sometimes choosing nothing, no response, no revenge, no re-engagement, is choosing peace. I didn't message her. I didn't scroll through her feed. I didn't stare at the last photo she tagged me in years ago pretending everything was fine. I just set the phone face down and let the quiet return. My eyes drifted toward the shelf near the window. 2 folders, stacked side by side. One held the letter. The other held the case file. Both closed. Neither forgotten. I stood and walked slowly to the window, arms crossed over my chest, not to shield myself, but to feel where my body ended, and the air began. The city stretched out below me, its lights beginning to flicker like tiny anchors in the dark. The apartment around me was still but not hollow. It didn't feel full, not yet, but for the first time, it didn't feel stolen. Not robbed, not trampled, not manipulated into emptiness, just mine. And in that strange, quiet moment, watching the dusk fold into night, I understood something I hadn't known I'd been waiting to understand. Some stories don't end with noise. They don't end with courtroom victories or front-page retractions or explosive confrontations that finally make people gasp and say, "Oh, now I see." Some stories end when you stop needing to explain them, when you realize that survival is enough, that peace is enough, that being seen, quietly without expectation, is sometimes the loudest kind of love. I stepped back from the window, the shadows of the city dancing across my bare feet, and let the silence settle around me like a new kind of belonging. This was not a chapter closed. It was a life reclaimed. And this time, I would not hand it back. Sometimes the people who raise you are the ones who rewrite your story without asking. But silence isn't weakness. It's just waiting for the right moment to speak with proof. What would you do if your own family tried to steal what you built? Tell me in the comments, because you're not alone. Subscribe for more stories like this, real, raw, and quietly powerful.